let me explain what I mean by having a majority of 85. Then it means that you are able to get most of your policies through Parliament without any, if the chief whip of Tory knows what to do, without any obstacle or anybody standing on the way. But if then during John Major that had this limits of majority, but they still had a problem, they had to like do deals with some smaller parties. But maybe that might even be the reason for his downfall. I mean, Boris Johnson. What do you think?
The reason for his downfall are clear. This guy lied, misled the parliament, and in every corner, in everything that he does, there is always a mishap of some kind, prone to any sort of accidents and incidents. So, and I think the main thing is that his own cabinet are no longer
put it
trusting him.
They did,
because if you say something to your own top cabinet members, telling them something, and then in a few hours they realize that actually you lied to them. I mean, what leadership? I think this guy has completely discredited himself to the extent that his own colleagues are no longer able to trust him.
Politics,
and he lies.
Politics is a very funny game. I tell you, the same people that did et tu brute on him were the same people that backed him up during the vote of no confidence. What has changed?
Backing you up.
I don't understand.
Backing you up doesn't mean that you have a license to lie.
But they knew that he misled Parliament, but they still backed him up when the vote of no confidence came up. Most people that are turning against him.
But it didn't stop there. It went on and on and on, and ultimately they are going to pay the price themselves if they continue to do that. So rather than sacrificing myself for the sake of a liar,
so you sacrifice one person, sacrifice the liar.
This is the cruelty of the game.
So I'm just telling you, whether it's in Africa, in Asia, or this thing, politics is a game of interest. It's a game of interest. Anyway, well, the process of replacing him is ongoing. So they have almost about 4 people now from 8.
Is it 4 or 5?
5 now. So Monday.
3 of them are women, isn't it? Or how many?
1, 2, 3. Yeah,
3 women and
2 men. So on Monday they will whittle it down to maybe around. The last person will drop off again. Very interesting, easy system of doing things than the type of delegates we have in conventions in Nigeria. Anyway,
back to delegates. No.
Delegates procurement. I mean, I'm not putting the process of federalism down, but if it were, you will see like horse trading going on, bribery going on, and if you vote for this, vote for a camp, you get this job, vote for this. Maybe it's going on but in a more transparent way, apparently. Anyway, what do I know? So we'll find out who will be out of these 5. One person will replace Boris Johnson, and life will continue, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, let's leave that. I just thought I'll bring that one in.
And life will change, and we'll still be governed by the Conservative Party.
Maybe properly now.
And their own economic policies, they will affect our life. So it's,
of course, no matter who goes in there, whether
so
Labour
the king
or
dies,
it doesn't matter.
And then long live the king.
Yeah, it doesn't matter who goes in there, whether Labour, they say. Cost of living, everybody
Labour may change a little bit.
It won't change. Don't deceive yourself. It won't change. Anyway, talking about
So you really now the ability of Labour to change all this into something different.
I mean, because Labour has never been in this trouble.
Well,
before.
haven't you prospered under Tony Blair?
Circumstances have changed. You know what I'm saying? Because we never had COVID. COVID is like a epidemic, and all this cost
Well,
of living.
Brexit is one of the many issues, and it's their own creation anyway.
Anyway, and whether that is the beauty of democracy, they live one, so we've got to live with it. So it doesn't matter. The majority, it's a vote of majority. What do you think about this COVID? Before we go to Africa proper, COVID coming back, because I was reading 2 days ago that at July 11th there were 349,773 new daily cases of COVID-19. Is it because...
But how deadly...
that's what I'm going now. Is it... do we know how deadly it is? But fortunately, it doesn't translate into hospitalization. So the question is, why did they give us these figures? Did they give us figures on flu? Did they give us figure on common cold? Or is just the same
I
fear?
think they are offering now another booster this winter or in autumn. Well, autumn is nearly there now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So before winter, I think a booster is being offered to everyone over 50.
Do they know what we don't know?
Well,
because I mean, if you check the listers on symptoms, and I'm just wondering what's the difference between COVID-19 and cold? For instance, say if you have sore throat, if there's 58% chances that it might be COVID. If you have headache, 49% chances. If you have blocked nose, 40% chances of COVID. Cough without phlegm, 40%. Running nose, hoarse voice, sneezing, fatigue. These are symptoms of cold.
then I have one now.
No,
I mean, give me that list.
I know.
You wake up in the morning, every time you wake up in the morning, you have 90% of this.
Yeah, that's what I'm just saying. It's very, I don't know why they're giving this or the difference between ordinary cold and COVID. The BA, they call it the variants making the rounds now at the moment. BA2, BA4, and BA5. If the government, that's why one thing Bojo did, which I liked, was sort it. Let's get on with it. Life continues. You don't say because you have COVID, then everybody, the whole system collapses. No, it shouldn't. In life, there could be casualties, but life continues. So at least you give him that, if not for anything, to reopen the economy, to dispel the fear of COVID. But now it's coming back. You can see some people putting on face masks and everything like that. I mean, it's
leave that. Do you think, and touch wood, this never happens?
Yeah.
If you find yourself in a situation similar to what happened about a couple of years ago, and you've been asked to go back to lockdown, so do you think you're going to abide by it this time, or you're going to play Boris Johnson or go to your parties?
I'll probably go to my parties.
Party.
Yeah, I'm going. You see, because when it came the first time, it was like an unknown quantity. Nobody knew what was going on. But now, at least some eggheads are walking around the clock, monitoring this and checking the seriousness of it, just for us to be safe. It's maybe economists shouldn't. That's why most economists around the world now are suffering inflation going out of.
Is it because of COVID or because of Ukraine war?
Both. People we always like to, or bad management of the economy. We'll talk about that, but just before we talk about Sri Lanka, because that is very, very important to me. But we'll leave that. Let's go to Angola.
Yeah.
See, the death of the former president, who was controversial when he was alive, and even controversial in death as well.
Dos Santos.
And died on the 8th of July, age 79. And this guy has been in power for 38 years.
Yeah, nearly 40 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the unfortunate, I want to use Angola to focus mainly on the fault lines of rulership or presidency or governance of Africa. This guy has been there for 38 years. Instead of possibly building up the country, like most people or presidents of his generation, they became so inferior within themselves that they thought, if they had a headache, they would have to run to Spain. If they have a running nose, they have to go to England or come to England. They leave their own country. They refuse to build up their own country. With 38 years, this guy, instead of building up his country, he was trying to create a dynasty for his family, children. And shamefully, I will say, don't care what Angola might think, shamefully, he died in a hospital in Barcelona, in Spain.
Yeah.
And now, this quarrel between the children. The younger ones want their father to be brought back to Angola, the remains of their father to be brought back to Angola. And the elder ones say, no, we'll want him to be buried in Spain. If you look at this, fortunately, I would say, his close ally was the guy that replaced him. He chose personally to replace him. But that one played a very good game. Instead of following his footsteps in embezzling most of Angolan assets, he proved him. And now the children are saying, no, they will only bring the remains of their father once this guy leaves office. Because, I think it set up a probe to investigate the Santos' daughter, who was one of the richest, or through his father became one of the richest women in Africa. That's the abuse of office we've been talking about.
Okay.
And now, I would have thought maybe I was thinking of the opinion before that this thing used to happen only in West Africa. But going to Angola, I couldn't believe it. So what is your take on this?
Well, let us, first of all, let us remember that Dos Santos spent most of his ruling days fighting a civil war that was never justified. And Angola went into horrible civil war against basically proxy war run by the Americans and South Africans. And this is UNITA force, which was subscribed to the Americans and the South Africans, the apartheid regime of South Africa. most of the time, De Santos actually was a head of the struggle against a force that is basically being sponsored by foreign powers, particularly the Americans and the apartheid regime of South Africa. By the time he managed actually to defeat UNITA, that is the force that was attacking him, and at that time he relied heavily on the Soviet Union and the other African states in order to be able to defeat UNITA.
Yeah.
And fortunately for Angola, almost by the time the Santos and the Angolans managed to defeat this force, which was sponsored by the apartheid regime of South Africa, then oil has been discovered in large quantities in the country. And this has almost completely turned the fortunes of Angola. And Angola was able to stabilize, was able to establish some sort of a functioning, to an extent, prosperous situation or potential situation. So in this sense, many Angolans see De Santos as a hero. But here is the issue now. Comes, and you quite rightly put that, corruption. Once you have the money, it's up to the regime that is governing the country because the money is there. And we know, particularly when it's oil money, you have problems. And the main problem is corruption. And we know from the experience of many countries the cares of oil and oil money. And this what Angola, by the way, to a lesser extent, was, fell into this trap, the cares of oil money. And corruption started to take hold. And this is where the issue with De Santos is. He hasn't only failed to tackle corruption, but it became clear. Now you told me that his daughter, who had money, fortunately now in 2-3 European countries, has been frozen.
Yeah.
Okay. So you told me that she is the richest
one of the richest
woman in Africa.
Yes.
Probably there will be a couple of Nigerian women who are richer than her.
It will surprise me anyway.
This would surprise you. So this is his own daughter now, and she's been probably promoted, or at one time even.
She was the head of one of the national oil company.
Yes, she was. Yeah. This is where the connection is. The main national oil producing and exporting company, she was the head of that, and she ended up with all this money in European banks. She's got all that money. Now, other than her, corruption was thriving. He did very little about it. But his successor, when he came over, actually being again, is a guy who almost being coached into this position by DeSantis himself.
He was his defense minister.
He was his defense and handpicked
yes.
to be
To
here.
replace him.
Credit to him that once he's here, he started to to turn against the Santos family, and this is where the issue is.
I mean, when you say he turned against the family, he didn't turn against it. He wanted. I mean, maybe his conscience pricked him because he'd seen the volume of dose of corruption being inflicted on the country, and he said, "No, this cannot go on." Because he wants history. He wants history to judge you fairly. I mean, you are a president. I mean, what does it show of a country? As you alluded to, Angola was very, very rich in oil and other minerals. But still, the president, just like many other African countries, going on medical trips outside their country. What does that tell you? Because either you don't have faith in the type of doctors you are training in your country, or because you just say, damn it, I'm going for the best around the world. Would the ordinary Angolan have that opportunity to go for treatment like that?
Unless they are involved in corruption.
Exactly. That's what I'm just saying. I think I don't, like most of them, they do the same thing. But now the Santos wanted to create dynasty. That's my headache with it's not good to talk bad of a dead person. I mean, according to African tradition, but I would.
It's very good that people should
learn, because if we don't learn,
revisit and try to analyze and see what happened. Death shouldn't prevent anyone from actually held account, even death.
Of course, I mean, like.
So as much we praised him for acting as a leader of the country that managed to repel the aggression by the Americans and the apartheid South Africans in the form of UNITA. We praise him for that. We praise him for being a leader of the country that is able to restore the unity of the country.
At least no
and
fighting.
Equally, this shouldn't
He was responsible for destroying the country economically as well. I mean, you have a very nice analogy, situation like Zaire. What's his name? The man that was there before.
Okay.
I've forgotten his name now. That destroyed the company. The name I said there was no country before him called Zaire, and there won't be any country after him called Zaire, and he succeeded in doing that. Mobutu. So I mean, the same thing I will equate. Is gone now, but it's for the people living to learn from this stupid thing that keep on recurring in the continent of Africa. Anyway, we'll go for a short break now, and when we come back, I want us to connect